Sukkah is made out of two main things, walls and schach. You can't have a sukkah without walls, and you can't have a sukkah without schach. Even though most of the halachas are relevant to the schach, sukkah nikra al shem ha-schach, that's why it's called sukkah, for the schach, but the there's a chair, here's a seat. There's a seat available.
I push the button. Great.
So, sit down. What?
I have to leave early. They came upstairs.
Sit down. So, even though the main part of the sukkah is the schach, but the walls are also have a main importance, and obviously you can't have a sukkah without walls. So I'd like to first discuss a little bit about the walls, and then we'll get into the schach. So the best way to make a sukkah is to have 4 complete walls. A person should try to have 4 complete walls, even though we all know the famous remez in Sukkah, Samach is 4 walls, the Chaf is 3 walls, the Hay is 2 walls and a Tefach. It's true. A sukkah is kosher with 3 walls, and a sukkah is kosher with 2 walls and a tefach. But we'll see soon that there are a lot of cases where the walls might not be as simple as they seem, and you might be missing a wall or so. So when you have 4 walls, you're on the safe side. If you have a little bit less, you're cutting it close. The halacha is like this. We know we could have a lot of lumdish kind of walls. We know we have lovet, for example. You can make a wall with slats, right? You have many people have on the deck. They have a fence around, and the fence around is made with slats, and that's your wall. Now, a wall has to be 10 tefachim high. 10 tefachim is 40 inches. Go 40 inches high. The wall shouldn't be less than 40 inches. 40 inches high, going around, and you could have a gate, you could have like a gate or a fence, so you have slats going one way, so then they're attached, we call lovet. As long as they're less than 3 tefachim from each other, right, they're within 10 inches of each other, 9 inches of each other, within 9 inches of each other, so then you have lovet, they're attached. We look at it, it's attached. That's we call a lumdish wall. You have a lovet that goes around. But the Mishabura Paskins, based on the Magen Avraham, it's a chumrah, but he holds that you can't have, if you don't have a 4-wall sukkah, you can't make your sukkah based on lovet. In other words, if you only have 3 walls to the sukkah, so you can't have your sukkah based on a lovet, based on a halacha mishum sinai of lovet. You have to actually have, at one point, you have to have shtayim da arevan. You have to have 2 walls that are considered walls that are according to each other, that are touching could be through lovet, but you have to have 2 complete walls, one next to the other. So you can make these 2 walls by actually attaching 2 of the slats. As long as you get 4 tefachim, 4 tefachim is considered a wall. So if you get 16 inches, or you can take a 20 inch to be on the safe side, take a 20 inch panel and stick it on there. So you put it on one wall, you put it on the other wall, then you're okay, because you can have, that's called shtayim da'arevan. But to make a wall straight out of lovet would be questionable. Now there is a kula, because on top of the fence you have a beam going across. In other words, the Gemara in Eruvin says like this, that a wall is made out of shesi and erev. Shesi and erev means, the erev the city is called an erev because you have a string that goes around this way. It goes around, what do you call it, horizontal. Horizontal is erev. Shesi is vertical, goes up and down. So the slats are all shesi. They're going up and down. But if you have beams that go this way across, if you have like a woven, like some of the fences are woven, that's called a mechitza of shesi ve'erev. So that's better. It's a better mechitza. That's considered a complete mechitza. So the fences always have a rail on top, your deck will have slats, but it'll also have a rail on top. So the question is, does that one rail on top make it considered already a mechitza of Erev, Shesi ve'Erev? Then it will be a good wall. So the diavad, you could be samech on that. But l'chatchila, one should try to close up some of the slats to make two walls that are complete if your sukkah is based on that. Usually, we'll see soon what it might be negaya for, what it might be practical for.
Let's say the love is only Shef, or I'm sorry, only Erev. Is that all?
So I'm going to tell over on my side. I said it over last year, I say it over again. I was learning by David, Salvation, sein gesund und stark. And so his sukkah, he has the same sukkah that Biskarov used to use, his father used to use. So his sukkah is basically built with two panels, one on top of the other like this, right? Around, that's how his sukkah is made. He has a frame, and then he has two panels, one on top of the other, like that. Now, he hangs up against the wall, he hangs up sheets along the side of the wall, white sheets. He hangs up, hanging down along all walls. So you normally can't ask him these kind of questions during the year, but Sukkot is always he's Mekayim the Goyin of being B'Simcha straight during Sukkot. So you can ask him whatever you couldn't. I once asked him a question during my first year there. He threw me right out of the house. I was going to ask him a question during the first year in yeshiva. He literally walked me out the door. But on Sukkot, he's much different mood. So he's mamash Mekayim Simcha Sukkah. So someone asked him, it was a mirror guy that asked him, everybody's shushing him, trying to get him out, but he asked him the question, how come you hang up sheets on your walls of your sukkah? How come you hang up the sheets on the wall? So he says, three reasons why he hangs up the sheets on the wall. Reason number one, he hangs up the sheet on the wall is because the Biskarov is given kalt. Biskarov was cold because there's a little crack between the two beams, and the air gets in. So the Biskarov was cold, so he hung up the sheets. The Biskarov's not here anymore, but the sheets remain up. That's the first reason, the main reason. The second reason, he said, is because it says Parisal Asadin for nice sukkah. Right? You have to hang up sheets for nice sukkah, so you hang up sheets on the wall. The third reason, he said, is because...
Where does it say you have to hang up sheets?
So the Mishnah says, the Mishnah is actually talking about hanging it up by the schach, but that will, try to refrain from putting things by the schach today. So hung it up on the wall. The third reason, he says, is because the Goyin holds he can't make even a four-wall sukkah out of Loved. And here you have two panels, one on top of the other. There's a slight little crack there in between. So he says it's a sukkah of Loved. So he hung up a sheet to cover over that thing. Fregnished. The Olam was tummeling. The Goyin only talks about when you have slats of Shesi. When you have slats of Shesi going down, you can't make a sukkah out of Loved. But when you have, first of all, you already have 10 tefachim here. You have a good wall, and if you don't find such a thing, nonetheless, that was what he said. But halach l'maisav, you don't need it. But
and if the sheets move,
no. He some tacked them on. They don't move anyway. We'll see about the sheets moving. So anyway, so that's called the mechitza of Loved. So you couldn't make a mechitza of Loved, but if it's a four-wall sukkah, we hold. If it's a three-wall sukkah, it runs into problems unless you have part of that wall that has 16 or 20 inches. That's a wall, so you can consider Stein Raven. That's the walls, and we'll see where it comes up a little more relevant. It comes up a little bit. A kosher wall of a sukkah has to be Zayin Tfachim. A full wall. Complete wall is Zayin Tfachim. Zayin Tfachim is if you have 4 inches a tefach, so 28 inches. 28, you mach it up to 30 inches. So you make 30, it should be a little more than 28 inches. It should be a little more than 28 inches. It should be 30 inches. You should have the sukkah has to be. So sometimes the sukkah, you may have a tree knocking out part of your sukkah. Many times you build a sukkah and your whole sukkah isn't kosher. It may be on the overhang, it may be on a tree. You should have that last wall, which may be thin, You make sure you have 30 inches. Usually you have it, but 30 inches a sukkah wall has to be 30 inches. So if you're using that, for example, let's say this is your sukkah and your tree is knocking out this corner of the sukkah, the entire corner it's knocking out. So you want to sit over here maybe. You have to have 7 inches over here. 7 tvachim over here, 30 inches here. So at least this is also part of your sukkah. Otherwise, if you might knock out the whole side. If you don't have a sheer sukkah at the end, right? You have a tree going over here, and you want to sit on this corner. So you have to make sure that's a sheer sukkah. Usually it is. If you can sit there, usually there's enough. But make sure if you have a wall there, maybe your wall.
But if you don't have a sheer sukkah, you can't sit anywhere. Because then you only have 2 walls.
No, you have 1, 2, 3. You still have 3 over here. You just don't have this corner. You have 1, 2, 3.
If you have less than a shear on this side, do you have a wall there
knock this out, but you have 1 wall here, 1 wall here, and 1 wall here. You still have 3. Question is if you can use this
because it's a 4-wall sukkah of which you have the tree on one side.
Yeah.
But if you had a 3-wall sukkah, then you'd have a problem.
You have to be this way. Yeah. Comes the Geya today with the canvas sukkahs. The canvas sukkahs. So it's a big need in halacha. The most machmir shita, believe it or not, on the canvas sukkah is the Mishabura himself. And I'll just read it for you inside. Okay. He's talking about a wall that gets blown around by the wind. He said, "Okay, ein nochem." This is Machaber. This is the Shulchan Aruch speaking. Ein nochem lasis kol hamachitzas meiriyah shel pishtan b'loy kanim. You shouldn't make all the walls of a sukkah from sheets of pishtan, flax, whatever sheets, without sticks. We'll see in a minute what the sticks means. Even though you tie it good. Sometimes they get untied. There's a mechitza that won't stand with the ruach matzuya. So what does this mean? So there's 2 ways to learn the Machaber. The Chazon Ish says what this means is that the wind will come and literally knock down the wall. It'll make it the wall that's possible. So according to the Chazon Ish, comes out 2 things. That if as long as the wall's still going to stand, it's okay. And in our sukkahs, our canvas sukkahs, the walls don't fall down. They're made in such a way where they really become untied, and therefore there's no chashash that the wall is going to fall down at all. And like the Chazon Ish, this shouldn't pose a problem with our canvas sukkahs today. You have the old times, I still remember tying those strings on top. You tie the strings, they come apart. But today, if you stick it through the, they have like a
Velcro.
Yeah, you stick it through. They usually don't come apart. So, like the Chazon Ish, you don't have such an issue with the canvas sukkahs. The Mishabura says that it can't, even if they're tied good, but it can't move with the wind. It can't move. The wall moves. That's not called a mechitza. Mechitza, that's 1 minute it's here, 1 minute it's here, 1 minute it's here. That's not called a wall. So
isn't there a shear as far as
we'll get to that in a second. That's a good question. So I'll just read. The Mishabura says that. He says that if it's moving with the wind, so that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem as long as it's moving. So now the question is, how much does it have to move? How much does it have to move? So the Welt says if it moves 3 tvachim, more than 3 tvachim, it's not called a. You have to know 3 tvachim from the middle, or it means 3 tvachim from side to side. Mishal Muzalman says it means even if it moves a drop, which is almost impossible to be careful of. So, like the Mishabura, it's a little harder. Then the Mishabura has a second chumrah, another problem he has on top of it, which is many times your sukkah is situated in a place, where it's not going to move necessarily, because it's in your back near your house where the wind doesn't blow. Mishabura says, even if there's no wind, it's not moving, since if there would be a wind, it would move. Chazon Ish argues on that too. Chazon Ish says, no, it doesn't matter as long as it's not moving. So what's the eitzah? So first of all, one could be soymech on the Chazon Ish. One could be soymech on the Chazon Ish to use a canvas sukkah that's as long as it's tied well, that it's not going to fall down. It's made in such a way where the wall's not going to fall. Many times you have the wall of the door is not tied down well because you have to get in and out. That wall I wouldn't count. But the other 3 walls tied down well, you could be Samech on the Chazon Ish. But the Maisa, there's room to be Machmer for sure, like the Mishnah Berurah, that holds that it's very difficult to use these because they move. So that they came out with is what they call the Loved, which is what he really says here. The Mishnah Berurah says, Das Hataz, that even one wall you shouldn't make with these sheets. So what you could do is you can make a Loved. You could take straps and go from one side to the end. We used to do this. You tie a rope, one side, one pole, and you go to the next pole, and you make here you have your poles here. You have two poles, and you make one string, then you make another string a little higher, and you can make 3 or 4 strings up to make till 10 tfachim. You can get a sukkah of Loved. You can get within 3 tfachim from each other. So in other words, there's spacing about 7-8 inches apart, 7 inches apart. Make a string, and you say until you get 40 inches high, and then you have a mechitza of Loved. Now, even though we said before, wait, you can't make a sukkah with a mechitza of Loved, that's a chumrah. So the Sharatzian discusses the problem. Then Moshe Rak Gimel translate Mahani Kanim below Urias. Since you have walls of sheets which are tied well, so you can be Saimach on both together. You have walls of sheets. Plus you have the Loved, so you have the Magen of Chumrah, and you can be Saimach on both together. So if you have
is the Loved inside or outside of the sheet, or it doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter. Or the outside, doesn't matter.
Is there a criteria as far as what the material of the wall has to be made of? The reason why I ask is because in Florida in particular, a lot of people have these screen houses. Right. The wind goes right through.
Because very hot.
Take off the top part, at least open some of the parts of the roof, and put schach on it, and use that as a sukkah.
Yeah. The walls can be made out of anything. As long as you have walls. Made out of anything, so has walls.
The spaces in between the screen.
Right, so that's what we said. So if you have a screen, it's both ways. It's Shesi Ve'erev.
Right.
So it's a good wall. It's both ways. It's Shesi Ve'erev, it's a good wall. Now, we'll discuss about opening the top of the wall. We'll discuss that soon. But basically, we're just coming out now. So you can have a sukkah. So there's a chumrah not having a sukkah made out of Loved, and there's a chumrah not having a sukkah made out of sheets because they move. But if you do both together, you make a Loved and you make sheets, you're okay. The Sharatzian says you can be Saimach on that to make your sukkah. So it's a simple way of fixing up a sukkah. They even think they even sell them with straps. I don't know, they even sell straps that go across, take care of that problem. But so that's a sukkah made out of canvas. Now, the question is, how high up does your wall have to go? Could you make a wall do you have to make it all the way up to the schach or not? You know, many people make the sukkah on the decks, and they already have walls, like we said, around. They have a fence around, so you can fill up some of the holes, make sure you have a good sukkah. But nonetheless, you have a fence going around, and maybe that's good enough. You make poles up, and then you can make schach on top. So we have to be aware of a few things over here. Avada, if your wall is 10 tefachim high, it's a kosher wall. You have 3 walls you have. You have your wall of your house, we'll get back to the wall of the house. 3 walls up, so you can have 4 walls, so 10 tefachim high, you have walls, you're kosher. Now, the fact that it doesn't go all the way to the top is okay, because we have a halacha, it's called good asik mechitza. The mechitza is going to go up. The mechitza will continue traveling up, even though you don't see it, but the wall keeps on going up, all the way up. Now the issue will just come like this. If you're making your walls going all the way up, now the schach is up on top here. You're putting the schach on top here. So, l'chatchila, the schach should be covering over the wall. So when the wall shoots up, it hits the schach. Because if the schach is pulled in a little bit, so then we have an issue here. We have trei hilchasa. You have to say one halacha l'moshe Messina that the wall's going up, And then we have to attach this wall to the schach, because the halacha is the walls are supposed to be magiyos l'schach. The wall have to reach the schach. They have to touch the schach. So even though we could have a lomdasha wall going up, but the question is, b'chleikis, the Ran and the Tur, if you could do trei hilchasa, if you could put together the wall going up with the lavud to attach it to the schach, if it's within 3 tvachim. It's more than 3 tvachim, you're zicha out. Your schach has to be moved over all the way to the wall. Even if you have a full wall going up, your schach shouldn't be more than 3 tvachim away from the wall, because then your schach is not reaching your wall, and you're losing your wall. It's just like we sit on the sukkah, like sitting on a sukkah without a wall. The wall has to be magiyos l'schach, and if the schach is pulled over more than 3 tvachim are 10 inches, and 9 inches is pulled over more than 9 inches away from the schach, so that away from the wall, so then your wall's not. You have a sukkah without a wall. So it has to be magiyos l'schach, but it's okay if it's a little space, because we have lavud. We have the concept of lavud, which attaches things that are within 9 inches from each other. But the problem is, if you don't have your wall going all the way up, you're just shooting it up with a good asik. So then you get into this machloikis. If you could do the two together, could you have good asik together with lavud? And according to the Mechaber seems to say you could, based on the Torah. The Ran holds you can't. So it's machloikis, and one should be machmer because it's not such a problem to fill it up.
Can you say that walls bend? In other words, some people have homes in the sense that the skylight that opens up, so you have the walls going this way, part of the roof.
We're going to discuss that.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But in the case where you're just building the wall, so you have the wall and you have the schach should be over to the wall close enough to make lavud. But if the wall's not hitting the top, so then you must move the schach all the way over. It doesn't have to be schach kosher. We'll see. But you got to move it all the way over that it should hit.
What if the wall is within the sheer lavud going up? Do we say it's lavud with us? But could 2 lavud work together?
So the problem with 2 lavuds work is it's not hitting anything. Understand? If you have a beam on top, then you're okay. If you have put just a frame, the frame itself can make lavud to the frame. If you have a frame up there, usually you're okay because it hits the frame, and then as long as you have 3 tvachim, if you have a frame on top, you're usually okay. Now, okay, so that's one. Now it gets a little complicated. This tray, we call this concept trei hilchosas, because using 2 halacha l'mashim, there's 2 lomdasha walls over here. One is the shooting up, and one is the lavud. Now I want to explore this concept a little further, which is very negei l'maisa. We have another concept of a lomdasha wall, which he mentioned, which is called doifen akuma. Doifen akuma means like this. Let's say you have a wall, you have your sukkah, you have a wall, like you're saying, you open up some of the roof. So you have a wall and you have a ceiling here, and then you open up the middle. You have a skylight, you open up the middle and you put schach on top. Very common. So the schach is not attached to the wall. So the answer is anything which is within 4 amas, which is quite a distance, 4 amas, is considered, you can make a doifen akuma. You can make look like a bent wall, and your wall goes to there. Anything which is within dollar amas. An amma is l'chumra is 16 inches times 4. Did you say 64 inches? So within 64 inches, you can make you have a skylight opening up, so you can make your wall go up, and your wall will turn. And that would be considered the walls hitting the schach. This is very relevant today. The reason why it's very relevant is almost every single sukkah that's attached to the wall of the house, you have an overhang on top of your house. You have an overhang, the roof comes out a little bit. And the roof comes out more than 4 tvachim, depending, 12 inches. And schach posel is posel with 4 tvachim. So even though if you put the schach all the way to the wall, in other words, so you have your house here, it's the overhang, and you build your schach all the way to the wall, but you can't sit underneath the overhang. We all know you can't sit underneath the overhang. The overhang, if it's more than 4 tvachim, it's called schach posel. So then, your schach is not starting till 1 foot over. But that's fine, because you say doifen akuma, your wall goes up, your wall turns, and then your sukkah starts. So there's no problem. You have doifen akuma, and your wall starts then. Good, so your schach is still attached to your wall. No problem, you still have schach attached to the wall. But the issue comes like this. Many times what we do like this is we build a sukkah to the wall, but then we don't bother putting the schach all the way to the wall, because anyways you can't sit under it. And there's a svara, why put schach to the wall when I can't see where I could sit until? Leave it open, right? You leave it open, and then I could see, I can't sit underneath that part, I still don't know where the schach starts. So the question is now, is my schach attached to the wall? What do I have to do to consider this schach attached to the wall? I got to do three things. I got to do doifen akuma up to Shemayim over there where my roof is, doifen akuma. Then my schach is way below. So you have to say what we call chavet rami. We have to pull the roof down until there, till it's flush with the schach. Okay? You have doifen akuma going, and then you say chavet rami, you pull it down. And it's flush. That's trei hilchos, two halachos mashmusinas.
What do you mean you pull it down?
You have a roof here, right?
Physically you're pulling something down?
Not physically. You make believe it goes down. My schach is starting here.
Okay.
So that's one issue. Could I do that? A. Now, even if you could do that, we got another issue. If you're not exactly aligned, well, it's very hard to align it fully. So your schach might be starting 2 inches over from where, even if I would pull down the overhang, it wouldn't hit exactly the schach. I still have 2 inches. So now I have to do 3 halacha l'maisha mesinas. I have to do doifen akuma, chavet rami, and loved. Right? And this is very common. So,
This is only really common if you're relying on that particular wall. If you have 3 other full walls, it's not an issue, right?
if I'm relying on that wall. Yeah, so we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, if you're relying on that wall, it's an issue. If you're not relying on that wall, if you have 3 other walls, you don't have a problem. Yeah, so the Eretz Scheiner says it's possible, such a sukkah. Levidin there from the Mishnah Berurah, it's clear that it's kosher. You can make a sukkah with these 3 hilchos for some reason. He doesn't tell us why. But if you look in the Mishnah Berurah, it's clear that he holds it's kosher. But other places can mean that it's possible. The proper way to do it is taka put your schach going all the way to the wall. If you make your schach going all the way to the wall, then you have a regular doifen akuma. Because that schach is possible, but you use it for your doifen akuma. But if it's pulled away, you get involved in this question.
You could put a board there too.
You could put a board there too. It's better to put a board there. This way you know you can't sit under it. That's correct. Now,
you have doifen akuma from 2 different sides. Is that okay?
No. On each side itself. Each side you look at separately. That's right. So Glenn is bringing up. So you have 3 walls anyway. So that would depend. If you have 3 good walls without a problem, so then you don't need this 4th wall at all, and then it's fine. You have a 3-wall sukkah.
And the reason the schach isn't all the way over is just so that you can see how far your roof is overhanging?
But a lot of people don't bother. Don't bother filling up. Sometimes your mat doesn't reach so far,
Right.
So you leave that part open. It's very common that people leave it open. Yeah. So if you would have 2 overhangs, let's say you're in a corner of a house, sometimes you're in a corner, you build it so you have 2 overhangs, so then you have the problem on 2 sides, then you would run into more of a problem. Because then you're using 2 of your walls like that. But it's something to be aware of.
Mishnah Berurah says you're able to do that, all 3 of them together?
Mishnah Berurah is a mavur you could do it, I'll show you. It's a mavur you could do it.
By doifen akuma and Gadasi
You can't do it. Yeah, a lot of steers in Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is mavur you could do that. Mishnah Berurah, I'll show you the Mishnah Berurah. He's saying a chiddush there, but it's not relevant for the share. Now, let's move to the schach a moment. There's something called a maimed. We all know it's a maimed. That you can't. That davar makabel to a schach is puzzle. A schach has to be made from gedulei karka, something that goes from the ground, right? We all know, and it has to be made something that's not makabel tuma. So if you have a kli or something, you can't use a ladder. Is even a shiloh putting it on. Anything which is used as a kli is makabel tuma. It has to be gedulei karka. Now, you could also have things which are technically kosher as schach, but we don't use. For example, varm the shenashtano. For example, let's say a piece of paper. Paper is made out of wood. I don't know what it's made of today, but it used to be made out of wood. And it's paper is gedulei karka, but it's nishtana. It doesn't look like wood anymore. So the Rambam holds that that's possible for schach. We'll see it's relevant to see in a moment. So if it's the nishtana to us, it doesn't look like the original thing that grew. You can't use that for schach. So basically, things that grow on the ground give us schach, bamboos and these things. What's relevant more is for mats and things like that. We'll see in a moment. There's something called a maimed. A maimed is the thing holding up the schach. Now, the halacha is like this. If you have, let's say, metal is not kosher for schach. It's not makabel tumah, it's not gevurah karka. Metal is holding up your schach, so that's called a maimed. You have poles of metal, and you put your schach on that, so that's a maimed v'davar on makabel tumah. So the halacha is meikra din it's kosher. If you go to a sukkah and you see that it's being held up by metal poles, it's kosher, you can eat in it, you can make a bracha. But we don't make a sukkah like that. We don't make a sukkah with a maimed of a davar makabel tumah. If it's already made, you could sit in it. But you don't make the sukkah like that. So it doesn't make your sukkah possible, we hold. But you shouldn't, there are sheets of something else, but we paskin doesn't make it possible. We paskin doesn't make it possible. But you don't make the sukkah like that. So if you have metal or anything that's possible for schach, you can't use that as a maimed to hold up the sukkah.
So if you got metal walls and with the regular schach
so if you have metal walls, so you can't light a schach directly on the wall. So the question is, what do you do? Now some people, what they do is they just cover it. You cover it with a canvas. That's not the best way to do it, because even though there's a hefsek, you're blocking between the poles and the schach, but it's still being held up by the poles. It's not being held up by that little piece of canvas that's lying on top. The proper way to do it is to put two by fours going the opposite direction, right? So if you have your metal poles over here, you put two by fours going this way, and you light a schach on the 2 by 4s. So it's the walls are maimed de maimed. It's holding up the thing that's holding up the walls. Now this we hold, for example, when you build a frame, you take a nail and you're banging the wall into the 2 by 4s into the frame. So that's the nail is also made out of metal. So, but the nail is just holding up the wood, which is holding up the schach. So that's called a maimed de maimed. So that l'chatchila we hold you could use. So therefore, if you have metal poles, so if you put two by 4s going the opposite direction, so the metal is holding up the 2 by 4s, and the 2 by 4s are holding up your schach, that's l'chatchila, one can make a sukkah like that.
Is plastic considered the same idea as metal?
Plastic is also, you can't be right. Plastic anyways is something which you can't make schach with. So it's also you can't make a maimed with plastic. But now the thing is like this, that the walls, you're allowed to be maimed on walls. Right? Let's say you have a stone walls. You could put your schach directly on that. That you'll see the Ran has an explanation of that, but the regular walls you could be maimed on. But something which you're putting in, which you're building in, so if it's something which is possible to use for schach, you shouldn't be holding up the schach. So you should always have 2 by 4s that are holding up the schach. So where does this come in? This issue comes in a few places. So now for example, the mats. What's the halacha with mats? Using mats for a sukkah, for a schach. So the halacha with mats is that in the Gemara you find machzalis. Whatever's made for shchiva, what's made to lie down on is considered a kli. It's like a mattress. It's considered a kli, and that you can't use. It's makabel tumah. You can't use it for a schach. The mats today that you buy with a hechsher are not made for shchiva. There's no issue. The ones that are made, the ones you buy, you could go by the Chinese. They make these mats that you have to be careful on. You have to know what it's made for. If it's made for a kli, then you can't use it. Some are made for window shades. They make all different kind of things. But the ones you buy that have a hechsher on it that are made for sukkahs are not made for shchiva. They're made for tzel. The schach is made for tzel, so those are kosher. They're kosher for a schach. There are those that are yeah.
Would the window shade be made for tzel too, or is that?
You know how it's made. If that's called for a kli or not. Yeah. But you should make it. You get a cut, and you can cut it yourself. If you go down there, they'll cut it for you. So then you cut it the shade in the schach.
So it's not the actual construction of it. It was the actual kavanah.
What it's made for. What it's made for. Yeah. What is it made for? So if it's made for lying on a shchiva, that's called a kli. But if it's made for sukkah, it's not an issue. Some are machmer because it has a din of a gzeris nesarim, or wood that's bought for tzach. I'm not going to get into that. There's those that are machmer, but mikra din is 100% kosher.
It doesn't matter what keeps this together.
So what's holding the mat together? Right. The mats are made out of slats or whatever they're made out of, and it's being sewn together and it doesn't fly away. So what's holding it together? So if you have a regular string holding it together, so that's being maimed by davar that you're not mesachach by. It's being maimed, it's being held. Again, it's a kosher sukkah for what's put up. But l'chatchila, you don't hold your schach with something that's not kosher for schach. So it's a maimed by davar that you're not mesachach by, so you have a problem. Now, some of them are made with cotton strings, or pishtan strings, flax strings. So those, linen strings, those are really gedulei karka. They're really gedulei karka. But the issue is two things. A, it's nishtana. It doesn't look like the original form. That's possible midrabanan. So for that reason, there's room to be makel. There's room to be makel because it's only possible schach midrabanan. And it could be masach. Many shittas holds that something which is possible to rabbanon you can use as a maimed. So if it's made with cotton strings or it's made with linen strings, these things that are gedulei karka, you could be makel on. But there's another issue. Some shittas hold this makabel tumah once you make it into a string. They make the ones certain ones with a hechsher. Once they're married to soul, the hechsher are made with strings that are not makabel tumah, that are not anything they can use. They don't work too well. So I can tell you after a few years they fall apart. Then you know you got a good match. So that you can use.
In fact, if it's a bad match, you know it's a good match.
Right.
If it lasts you 10 years, you're in trouble.
For tying down stock, and now they're advertising kosher strings for tying down stock. Is there any issue?
You have to look into what they're made out of, these strings. But again, as something which is made into a string, according to some Rishonim, may become makabel tumah. They're made into proper strong strings. And then they have to understand, the only time a maimed is a problem is if without it, the sukkah is going to blow away. If basically it'll stay, but what's going to happen is you're going to have a strong wind that's going to blow it away, then you could tie it down because it's going to stay without it. It's not a maimed. A maimed is only from a ruach mitzuya. So, for example, some people are machmer. The Chazon Ish holds that the maimed is not good. Chazon Ish didn't have any nails holding up his 2x4s that are holding up the schach, because the nails holding up the 2x4s on the schach. But the truth is like this: if the 2x4 lying across would stand anyways, you're just banging the nail in case a good gazunta wind comes. So that's not really a maimed. A maimed is something which is holding it only for regular ruach mitzvah is going to come. But if something which is out of the ordinary, you have to know what's called out of the ordinary here in Canada. But something out of the ordinary comes and you're putting it for there, you're trying the string to hold it down for that. So that's not an issue anyways. It's not an issue because it's anyways held up. So what many people will do is they'll put the mats on and then they'll put 2x4s on top of the mats. So the mats are being held down anyways. So what are you worried about? A very strong wind will come. So the strings that are holding it is not a maimed. It's not a maimed anyways because it's being held down by the 2x4s. I could tell you that I once put the mats on, the 2x4s on top, and the wind came, the whole thing went flying like an airplane because even no matter how heavy those 2x4s are, but the mats have a koyach to.
So if you tie the
wind
2x4s
gets underneath
down,
and it goes.
Way to go.
So if the 2x4s are on top of the mat and you tie the 2x4s
if the 2x4s are on top of the mat and you nail the 2x4s in,
or you tie them down.
Or you tie them down, so that's a maimed, right? That would be better.
It's good.
Yeah, it's better.
Is 2x4 the largest? You couldn't use a 2x6, I'll say.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Yeah, so that's the sugi of the mats. Any other question on mats?
If anything is, does it have to be in the Scheiner to be made into a string, or I mean, you can have like reeds that aren't in the Scheiner, just like woven together. So is that called what the Scheiner?
That's better. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Does schach be painted?
It's a shiloh if you can paint schach. Let's talk about it. You can paint the schach to look nice if that's if it's bottled to the schach, or if it's the thicker paint is not lechatchila because you can peel it off. But the ones that the shalak and stuff like that make a stain on it, the chayla should be okay.
Just can't waterproof.
Question is using the beams, using the beams. So Mikra Adin is like this. Mikra Adin, the Gemara says, Gezeres Sarm is always something which is 4 tefachim wide, which basically is 16 inches wide, or 12 inches wide. If you want to go to Chumrah, 12 inches wide, 12-inch wide beams you shouldn't use for your schach. L'maisa, we're machmer on anything that they use for roofing. In other words, whatever is used today to build for construction for roofs, one shouldn't use for his schach. So if 2x4s are used, I don't know what's used today, but if 2x4s are used, then there could be a nichel on the Gzeres Tikkur, one shouldn't use it. Things that are not used, Mikra Adin is okay. So these slats that people use, if they're not used for roofing, then you can use it for a sukkah. If they're used for roofing, you can't use it for a sukkah. You have to check that out.
Used for roofing means the frame or the actual...
No, to use for sichoch, the ones that go on top, not the frames. If the boards are used to use as a covering, as a roofing, a sichoch, then you shouldn't use that for your schach. If they're not used for that, then mikra din is good. The Chazon Ish was machmer anyways not to use it, but mikra din is not it's kosher. It's kosher. Agav, if you have a sukkah that's made with it, you could sit in it. You can sit in it. B'shas Chak is kosher anyways. You can even make a bracha. But l'chatchila, you shouldn't definitely. It's Rabban once it's possible. One shouldn't make a sukkah with anything that's used for roofing. Something that's not used for roofing. That they have another chumrah they say, because if the slats are very close together, it can't rain in. If a sukkah is made, or if the schach is made in a way where it can't rain in, that could be a shaila. But if the slats are roughed, so they don't go together so good, so then it's better. Then the rain could get in, and it's less of an issue.
I know some of them they round off. Is that
That's better because it can't get in the rain.
But it's not an issue of like making a cleat.
Oh, making a cleat. It depends what it's made for. If it's just made for to use, that's not a cleat. Yeah. So again, you have to really check out what they use. You ask in Home Depot, what do they make these things for?
But again, you're not talking about the framing of the roof. You're talking about the actual.
I'm not talking about framing of the roof. I'm talking about actually to use to cover you.
So that's plywood. They don't use.
They use slats in
They don't use any 2x4. Even 2x6s, they don't use actually cover it. They use that to frame it. But
to frame. Okay, they use it for the cover. Right.
What are these slats made for?
Yeah, what are they made for?
What are they made for?
Yeah. They're not made for sukkahs.
Sometimes people have a roof that walls that go higher than the roof, and then
that's
they
better.
have a
Then
lining
the wind won't blow it
inside
out.
and slats sitting down below the top of the
wind won't blow away the roof then. The wind
no
won't
issue
blow
there.
That's good. Okay, I'll just add one thing here. I'll end with one point here. The Yischach. Okay. I just want 2 points. One point, we're talking about the walls. Many times you make your sukkah in the back of your house and you have sliding doors getting into the sukkah. You should be aware because you have a sliding door. The door slides. Many times the sukkah is not higher than the sliding door. Let's say the sukkah go till here. When you open the door, you lose your wall of your sukkah. Depending on how large your sukkah is and where it's situated, you can open the sliding door. Someone told me that he once had, his house, his sukkah is situated in a corner. His house goes over here, and it makes a sukkah here. And he has 2 sliding doors. And when both sliding doors was open, he didn't have walls for a sukkah. So be aware what you're using for your walls. Notice that when you open the sliding door, you may be losing. Going to the corner of the sukkah,
You'll also be an Indian of binyan.
It's not an opinion. It's not an opinion because
when you're closing it, you actually.
It's not opinion because you're allowed to open and close it. It's not considered opinion. It's not considered opinion. But if your wall is not attached, it's not lovered to the other wall going this way. You may have a problem of not having 3 walls.
Wouldn't it still be like a Pesach? Like that would still be.
Yeah, but Sukkah Pesach attaching your So if your sukkah is higher. Sukkah goes above the sliding door, then you're usually okay.
This person's case, when the sukkah had opened up to would that be a problem possibly?
No, so that was discussing that. It's not a problem. The halakha is like this. I'll point out 2 things. The halakha is like this. You can't build the walls before you. This is what he's referring to. You can't build the walls of the sukkah before you build the schach. You can't build a schach. You couldn't put on schach before you build the walls. The walls have to come first and then schach. If you have schach and then walls, it's a problem with tassel lemon asi. Now, this rule, there are rules to this rule. Look, you put up a frame, you have a frame, and you put schach on.
Frame without a wall. Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Or if you have not, if your walls aren't 10 tefachim high, you have your deck outside, you put schach on, and then you build up the walls. Right. You can run into a problem. Now, this rule doesn't always apply. It usually applies. If you don't need full walls, you just need a tefach around the top. There are ways to get around it, but okay. But in such a case where you built the walls and then you open the doors and close it, the place can say that's okay. That's okay. Even though you might be knocking out your wall and putting it back up, the place can say that's okay. The issue comes up with Tasav Lemon Asi more when you build. Many people have rain roofs, shlaks that close or roofs that open. and you have things that are on hinges. So the halacha is that the Ramah brings down that if you build your sukkah while it's closed and then you open it, you have a problem with tasav loy menasi. The sukkah is not kosher. A sukkah in a bayis is not kosher. Now, by opening a roof, if you actually, in the old days, you had a roof and you built a sukkah inside the house and then you took a hammer and smashed the roof, that's called an asiyah. That wouldn't be an issue. But the ones that are made on hinges, or you push the button and the glass thing opens, or however you get the thing open, it's not called an asiyah. So if you build your sukkah underneath, your schach underneath, and then you open it afterwards, you have a problem that you built the sukkah when it was no good, and then you open it up and it becomes good. That's tasav loy menasi.
What if the other way around? In other words, where the schach is on top, and then you open underneath it, you slide it open underneath.
That's a good question. Pashtus, if it was underneath. But pashtus, it should be open before, right, and then you build it, and then you could close it. Once you built it, then you could close it and reopen it. If someone forgot, and he built it when it was closed, he should open the roof and then pick up each schach. He should pick it up, and pick it up. That's called a new asiyah. You pick up the schach, you bang it up, each one. That's a new asiyah. Because your sukkah should be made when the roof is open, not when the roof is closed. That's something to remember. These things happen. Also, a sukkah's ganvach is kosher. You can have a sukkah made, as long as it's made for sale. It doesn't have to be made for a mitzvah sukkah. It's made for sale, it's kosher. The question comes if you have your goy build your sukkah. Maybe you'll have a goy build a sukkah, so the walls they can build. But the question is, could they put up the schach? And even forget a goy, a cotton that's not bar mitzvah, he puts up the schach. It's a question if it's l'chatchila, you should do it. L'chatchila, a person, a gadol over bar mitzvah should do it, not a goy. If a goy does build a schach, then the halacha is chadash by davar. You don't have to pick up the whole schach. You just have to do a small portion of your schach, a tefach by a tefach. One part of your schach you should redo and put on that sukkah, and that's machshir the whole thing. B'diavad is kosher without it. B'diavad is kosher if a guy puts it up. So chadash b'dav is machlokes v'chatchila. B'diavad we paskin so l'chatchila. But l'chatchila, if a guy puts up your schach, you should go to the corner. If you have a guy putting up the schach, you should go to the corner and pick it up. There are those that are makel that are good.
True with the cotton as well.
The cotton as well. There are those that are makel by a guy building it, because if you hire him to build it, you pay him. So a poil is kiyodei. The Machnafaim holds a poil is like yodei. So it's like you did it, but then it's kosher. You don't have to machadish b'davar. But the chatchila, if you hire a guy to do it and he puts it up, you should go to the corner of the schach, pick it up and put it down, be machadish b'davar, and then the chatchila you did it.
In the mitzvah itself of building a sukkah, you only get a bracha.
It's a mitzvah to build a sukkah, and whoever's metarech, and you schwitz, and you build it, and you put it up, there's a bigger mitzvah.
Usually the mitzvah there's always a bracha before.
There's no bracha. We do make a bracha, but we make it when we.
But Leishim
Sukkah includes the building of the sukkah.
Yeah, I heard someone say.
Yeah, the Gemara says in Yerushalmi, really we should have made a bracha on the building. It's a mitzvah to build a sukkah. We should be zeicha to a